everyone to the open forum for the RUBRIC program. My name is Stephen Allville. I'm the Executive Vice President for Programs at TEDCO. I'm here with Sakari Brown, who is our Program Manager for the RUBRIC program. And before I turn it over to her to talk a little bit about it, I just wanted to welcome everybody and say a couple of words about TEDCO if you're not familiar with our organization. We are here to support entrepreneurs across Maryland, and we do this in a variety of ways through a number of funding programs, through a number of technology transfer programs, moving technologies out of the universities and federal labs, and through a lot of entrepreneurial support programs, through databases that we have available for doing market research, to advisor networks that we can connect you to various other programs and connections. So one of the things that we often do is talk with entrepreneurs and learn what your needs are, and then try to develop programs to meet those needs. One such effort is this RUBRIC program. And with that, let me turn it over to Sakari. But before I do that, let me mention one more thing. While Sakari is speaking, I will be monitoring the chat and the questions. So if there are any questions that come up, feel free to put them in there, and I will have Sakari answer those as we go through the program. Okay, with that, Sakari, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We hope that this presentation serves to be helpful for you as you explore the RUBRIC program. So let's jump right in. Okay. So what is the purpose of the RUBRIC program? So the program is here to really assist technology-based companies here in the state of Maryland that have been impacted detrimentally by COVID-19 and the economic downturn associated with the pandemic. The program targets socially and economically disadvantaged companies and rural companies. So you don't have to necessarily identify as both, but if you fit into one of those two categories, you are eligible to apply to the program. This is not meant to be, financing that will sustain you for the life of the business, but serving to be a bridge through COVID-19, the pandemic for the time that we know, in helping the company continue to do the great work that your companies are seeking to do. So let's talk about eligibility. So the first part of it is making sure you are a Maryland qualified business, and how we define that. And you can find all of this located as well on the RUBRIC website, on the TEDCO website, is you need to have at least 50% of your employees based in the state of Maryland, and with the intention that your business operations and everything will be in Maryland and remain here, and the principal business operations of your companies in Maryland. Why is that, right? Well, TEDCO is here to support entrepreneurs in the state of Maryland. So we need to make sure that the money that we're deploying is going to those companies that are here. And so that's one of the first things that we look for on the application. And that's one of the first things that you should make sure before submitting your application. If you have questions about it, we're here to be helpful. The other part is we're targeting technology-based businesses, and how we define that is that relies on intellectual property, that your company relies on intellectual property to be competitive. The best way I can demonstrate this, right, is if you are a company, a small business, or whatever the case is, and maybe you're a bakery, let's say, and your bakery leverages technology to process payments from customers, and that's really where your technology comes in. We understand technology is all through and out how we live our life, but just having an iPad doesn't necessarily mean that your business itself is tech-based, because any other bakery can come up and pop up with an iPad. But if you had a machine that somehow made muffins appear out of nowhere with less impact on the environment, and you had that that machine that you built and created, that would be the technology that would make you a technology-based business. It seems extreme, but usually that helps people understand what we think about when we say tech-based, because we get it. Everyone has a phone, everyone has something that technically means, we're using technology, right? But it's really on that intellectual property piece to make you have that competitive advantage. Again, as mentioned earlier, when we're talking about socially and economically disadvantaged or rural areas, those are not just something we're pulling up out of our head. for the socially and economically disadvantaged definitions, you can find that we're pulling that from the Code of Federal Regulations. And if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of how that's defined, and I believe that you should to make sure that you're eligible, we have the sections that you can look into, and also those are linked on the RUBRIC website in the RFA. Rural companies. So you don't have to be both, right? Rural, identifies rural and also socially and economically disadvantaged. But if you are going to say that you are a rural company, then we need to make sure that you're not in, as you see the counties listed here, right? Baltimore City, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, Montgomery, like we have to check that. And so really make sure that you can provide evidence that backs up that you actually qualify based on the rural, what we're defining as rural counties. The other piece there is around your workforce, the size of your workforce. You need to have less than 100 members on your team or at your company. And then finally, you need to actually have been impacted negatively by COVID. And that might look like you haven't been able to retain your workforce or to get new people on your team to advance the development of a product or a service, or you haven't been able to maintain customers or get new customers, or maybe you originally planned to do a round of fundraising, but because of everything that's going on, you had to delay that, right? Whatever that is, it needs to be clear. And we recognize that this is something that has, pandemic has impacted everyone and every company very differently. And so it's important that the details on how are there. So let's talk about the money. How much is it? Where is it coming from? How is it dispersed? So we're operating from a $5 million that was awarded to TEDCO by Governor Hogan. And think of it as coming out of the state of Maryland's rainy day funds, right? The awards that we are deploying are up to $100,000. And basically they will be delivered into what we call tranches of $50,000, but in layman's terms, that means two separate disbursements of the money, right? After 6 months, you would be eligible to apply for a second award, subject to the availability of funding. Okay, just because you got it the first time, we can't necessarily guarantee that you would get it again, but you can submit your application just to put yourself out there and see what happens. The funding that you do receive, if you are fortunate enough to receive it, it has to be used to address those issues that you identified in your application in terms of how your company was impacted by COVID-19, right? So if in the application you mentioned that you had to delay production of your of a sample product and you get the award and you end up using the money to, I don't know, fund, polos for your company, like we're going to be checking in. So you need to make sure that you're documenting how you're using that funding because we're going to be asking for that information. So how do you receive the money? Like, what exactly does it look like? I'm sure, you're like, Sakari, do I get Bitcoin? Do you just show up with some cash in a box? Like, how do I get this money? What's the mechanism as we have here? So the $100,000 or up to $100,000 is delivered through a reimbursable grant. And so what that looks like is, we mentioned earlier, you have those two tranches or those two payments that is how you get the money. We require you to report your quarterly revenue, and you will be obligated to give TEDCO 3% of your quarterly revenue over a period of 5 years. It's a 5-year obligation. Now, the repayment of that is capped at 150% of the award. So if you receive $100,000, we're not going to be able to continue. And let's say your company is doing really, really well and your quarterly revenue is just amazing. We are not going to be able to take advantage of that situation by trying to say, well, you're obligated for 5 years. And so if you end up paying us $250,000, then it is what it is. No, we are, making sure that that's not how it's set up. So that's why that cap is there. Now you do have the option to repay the grant early. And when you do that, you can reap some benefits from that, whether it's a discount on the cap of 150% or just not even having to worry about the 5-year obligation. There are various benefits to it. And our RFA, as I said, that's on our website, does go into detail about what that can look like based on when you repay it and how much you pay early. And just to be clear, Stephen said something earlier about why TEDCO exists, right? To be helpful to entrepreneurs in Maryland. And so the returns from the program, like the money we get back from you, will be going right back to support other early stage companies, or it might be returned to the state of Maryland. We're not using this money for Stephen and I to go have a nice steak dinner at Capitol Grill with Jimmy and the guys. Like that's not going to happen. So I want everyone to recognize that. Okay, we're really here to be helpful. So I hope that settles folks that might be like, what's the current? What are they going to do with that money? So I mentioned reporting requirements earlier, right? So this is what that would look like. So there's a midterm activity report that's required within 6 months. We will provide you with, a template, the information we need and things of that nature. So don't feel worried like you got to come up with something on your own. Within 12 months, there'll be a final activity report also required for you to submit. And then quarterly, we talked about that piece where you have to report your quarterly revenue. You will be required to submit some economic impact data up to 5 years post award. Again, these are not forms or reports that you're going to have to just come up with out of the blue. We will be here to guide you, to let you know what you need to submit and in what format or template. Okay. All right, so let's get to the application. If you haven't already looked at the application, that's okay. This is the great time to start taking some notes, because you're going to get some inside tips and insight into how this actually is evaluated once you submit it. So starting off in the beginning, right? What is it that we're looking for when we are considering the pieces of the puzzle that go with your application? So some of the major components: demonstrating the company's sustainability and the growth potential of the company, right? We'll be able to gather that from your answers to the questions in the application. Again, as mentioned earlier, is this a rural or socially or economically disadvantaged company? What's your status in that regard? And how have you been impacted by COVID-19? So the documents, or the way we get that information, is one, through an online form, through that portal, right? And so that's just a form that you not plug and play, but that's where you type in line. In addition, there's things that you have to attach, supplementary documentation that go along with that online form. So there's the executive summary or slide deck. And so basically what that is, if you're not familiar, it should either be like a one-pager or a short PowerPoint presentation that walks us through. We could be able to pick it up and basically finish reading it and have a real understanding of your company, your purpose, your team, your competitive advantage, and any particular accomplishments or milestones since you've been established, and your vision for the future. Financials, we're looking for the past 2 years financials that you have. Some folks opt to put that into an Excel format. Some folks put that into a PDF. Whatever you're currently using, we don't want to add more work. We leave it up to you as long as the data is there and it's clear. And then we also require something that validates your residency or the company's residency within the state of Maryland. Okay. So, application tips, very, very important. If you didn't listen to anything else I said, this is the part that I really, really want you to listen to, because this is based on what we've already started to see from doing reviews of these applications. So the first thing that I want everyone to do, if you have not already gone on to the TEDCO website and pulled up the rubric RFA before you submit your application, please do that. It's on the same page where you would click to start your application. The reason I'm really encouraging you to read that is because it's a short, easy read. Everything you need to understand how we're looking at your application is in there, from eligibility to merit and those sorts of things. The categories we consider are all in there. And I really want to make sure that everyone who is considering to apply feels comfortable in understanding what it is that we are looking for. When you go in and start actually filling in the data, right? So let's say you read the rubric, your RFA, you're like, okay, cool, I got it. Please double check that you are entering the correct county and the employee count on your application. Don't rush to that. That's going to be important because that's part of one of the initial screenings that we do, right? So when we look at it, it's you accidentally put Montgomery County for some reason, unfortunately, at that point, it's like, okay, well, and you don't apply, you don't qualify for anything else in terms of like socially or economically disadvantaged, then now you unfortunately have missed something, right? So we don't want those mistakes. We don't want folks to have to put so much effort into building these applications and unfortunately don't make it past that first screening. Same thing with employee count, right? So making sure that, the right amount of people, that percentage of at least 50% of your workforce is in Maryland. Provide as much detail as possible. In that form, we really give you the space and the opportunity to give us every piece of information you have. And specifically, I would say the areas that we've seen that can sometimes be lacking is exactly how you have been impacted or your company has been impacted by COVID, right? And being very specific and not just giving us one answer thing. Like, tell us specifically, like, do you have manufacturing that has been delayed, and how did that impact the future plans for 2020 and 2021? Go into that detail, because the more we have to work with, the better, right? Also, the other part of it is how you're going to use the funds. Be thoughtful there, and we understand that things might be shift. You're based on what you know right here in the moment, but what you know in the moment, just of course put that in something that's coherent and we can read, that makes sense and aligns with what you just told us about how you've been impacted by COVID, right? Answer every question on the application. It might sound crazy, but there have been applications where questions have been left blank. They've been one word, one sentence. Now, of course, if a question doesn't apply to you, that is understandable. If anything, put something in there that says non-applicable. But when we see an application, we're reviewing applications and we see something where things are left blank, that begs a bigger question on, how much effort is being put into this? Is this someone that really requires this funding? And you don't want anyone that's reviewing your application to feel like this doesn't matter, right? And then the last point is have a clear, or demonstrate a clear understanding of the competitive landscape and the need for your business in the market. Sure, we know there's so many businesses out there that it can seem like, things might be saturated, and it's easy to explain why you need to do this or maybe not. But like, we're not in you're the expert, right? We don't know your field. We may not know your field like the back of our hands like you do, right? If you've been working on this hard, be as specific as possible. If you know of a competitor, don't just give us the name. Give us, okay, well, this is competitor A, and this is how we stack up against competitor A. I caution against just putting a sentence that says we have no competitors. I'm an investor. That's usually not true. You may not have a direct competitor that's doing exactly what you're doing, but you usually have someone that's tangentially related to the work that you're trying to do, right? So again, take it seriously and put as much that you can out there and really highlight how you are different from others in the market and why you believe that there is a need there. Do you already have traction? Do you already have customers? Give us everything you have, right? And then, of course, if you have questions while you're filling out the application, don't hesitate to email us before you submit, right? If something's not working out, or maybe it doesn't make sense, or maybe you're unsure, like, is this too much information? Is this not enough? You can email us. We're here to help. Again, we're not here to, make returns to have steak dinners. We're here to be helpful to you all, okay? So I really want to stress that. So just let's go into the review process. So you submit your application, you've read the RFA. Well, let's start from the beginning. You've come to the forum, you've met or virtually met myself and Steven. You're asking questions. You read the RFA. You feel good. You're like, okay, I can do this. We qualify. You submit your application. You proofread. You do the details. Now what happens? So that's when we get it into our system. We have our weekly review session that we're working through now, and we go through a review process. The first part of that process is a compliance review. And that gets to earlier what I mentioned about being very careful and making sure you're checking how you fill out the form. So from a compliance perspective, we're going to be looking for, is this a qualified business, right? Is this in a a county that is eligible if in the event that they are, and if the event they're not a rural county, when we scroll down, are there details there that tells us that they qualify under the socially or economically disadvantaged mandate, right? So those are like is this a tech-based company? Remember my example earlier on the bakery with the iPad versus the bakery with the machine that poofs out muffins quickly and environmentally safe, like in an environmentally safe fashion. So that's our first check. Okay, so let's say all's well, you move past that. Now we're going to dive in and go into a detailed review on your growth opportunity, the impacts of COVID, your status, and how this award will be helpful to your company. And I want to be clear, I don't just review these by myself. I don't just look at it and make a decision and say, okay, great, no, yes. It's a team of us, including Stephen, and we go through these and we sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But it's not just one set of eyes on this, right? So we're really, again, trying to be helpful, being intentional, doing our part to make sure we're giving everyone a fair chance, because we understand that these are just some rough times and businesses need help. And so once we go through that, we'll get to the final approval and send out notices accordingly in terms of next steps for maybe a follow-up conversation before we can move forward with the award, or maybe we need to, maybe we unfortunately can't offer an award at this time. And so we'll send out an email regarding that. So that's how the review process flows, okay? All right, so let's say all is well. You do everything we talked about, you make it through the review process. We're like, great, this is a company we wanna give an award to. We have a few calls, everything checks out. How does this closing and post-award process look like? So we do have a funding agreement, and you can actually look at that on the website. It's non-negotiable. So meaning that, you can't come back to us and say, well, I want to change this clause, I don't like this. It is what it is. So if you might want to look at that first to make sure you're okay with what's in there before you go through this process. We'd hate for you to get all the way to the end and then, it's not something you can get comfortable around, right? You need to be able to demonstrate or provide a certificate of good standing for your company within the state of Maryland and confirm residency here in Maryland, okay? That's how we get through the funding agreement and it gets checked off from a legal perspective. Again, reporting. After your award, there's going to be some reporting required. That is required. So midterm report, right, for 6 months, final report within 12 months, and then you have that 5-year quarterly reporting requirement. And we're going to be gathering revenue and economic impact information from you during that time period, okay? And then the TEDCO portfolio. So Stephen, I'm not sure what the bullet here, what you wanted me to highlight here, but I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, no. So the other thing is, once you get one of these awards, you're then part of TEDCO's portfolio, right? Okay. So that opens other resources and assistance that we can have available through our other programs to you.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Okay, great.
You're welcome.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure. So that's how it flows, everyone. Okay, so we went through what does it look like before you even get things together to apply. Once you have read everything, you've looked at the funding agreement, you're happy, and we get to this point, and these are the things that come with it. Okay. So we want to give everyone an overview of what's been going on, as of yesterday, the data we have. So we've received 33 applications. And we've been able to review 20 of those 33. Of the 20 that we have reviewed, 35% of those businesses identify or are part of a rural county or within a rural county, 90% qualify into that underserved market, or what we were defining as socially and economically disadvantaged, and 70% of the 20 were actually eligible to even apply. So when we talk about passing that compliance test, 70% of the applications we received passed that compliance test. We are going to move forward with 12 awards. They haven't been closed as of yet, but we're working through that now. So of that, when we look at there's 50% of the total rural applications we received. 80% of those applications were eligible rural applications. And then with 56% of the total underserved applications that we received, 83% of those were eligible underserved applications or qualified into how we define that, right? So we are moving, we understand, we thank you. If you are someone on here who's already applied, we thank you so much for your patience if we haven't been able to get back to you. But as you see, we are moving through these and doing our best to get back to folks. So thank you for your patience if you are someone on the call who has applied and hasn't heard back yet.
Yeah, let me say one thing. The important thing about those numbers is if you are eligible, we're awarding at about an 80% rate, right? So the chance of getting an award for eligible companies is very high. This is much higher than our investment programs. So so I'd encourage you to apply. It's well worth it, as you can see so far.
Yes, great point. Okay, so this is me, program manager. My name's Sakari. Here's my email address. Take it down. Shoot me a note. Fun facts about myself. If you're in the Baltimore area, I work at Camden Partners as well. I'm on the investment team there. So when I say I'm an investor, like I am, I have previous experience being a consultant at a firm called Deloitte, and I used to actually work in construction. So my degree's in civil engineering. I used to do cool stuff like climb tower cranes and build cool buildings. So if you are a company or you have interest in that, you know, that's a connection point. But that's a little bit about me. Here's my contact information. And again, like I mentioned earlier, don't wait until after you submit. Don't feel like you have to wait, excuse me, until after you submit to reach out to us with questions. We are here to try to be as helpful as possible and, you know, getting the funding in the hands of the folks who really need it. So with that, I think that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we'll leave time for any questions we're getting.
Yeah, so thank you, Sakari. That was you did a great job. Maybe we'll add to your bullets. Public speaking will be next on your list, right? So great job with that.
Thanks,
so
Steven.
A couple of folks have asked questions, and I've answered them in the question box. So feel free to put a question there, or if somebody wants to raise their hand, I can turn you on so that you can speak to everybody, and I'm happy to do that as well. But we can hang out for a few minutes and be happy to answer any questions. Just to give you an idea of the questions that were asked online, I don't know if everybody saw those or not, but somebody was from Prince George's County asked if they could qualify. And keep in mind that if you're not in a rural county, you can still qualify if you meet this socially or economically disadvantaged criterion. Keep in mind, though, that we are, and I had questions about that as well. Keep in mind that the federal guidelines, the Code of Federal Regulations that we have in there are sort of the basis upon which we make that decision. But we are open. We're open on this area. So what we ask is that you make the case for being socially or economically disadvantaged. For example, you know, women, minorities, veterans, immigrants from many countries around the world are all sort of automatically included, because these folks are very underrepresented in venture capital and investments. So those are easy decisions for us. But if you think that you're in a gray area, I would encourage you to, you know, in the application, make the case for why you think you're socially or economically disadvantaged, and we will evaluate that. No questions? So you did such a great job, Sakari. Nobody has any questions on this.
Okay, well, I mean, if you're a little shy, you change your mind, you all have here's the email address, right? So if something comes later, I know sometimes after we watch something or participate, we're like, oh, I wish I asked that question. My email inbox doesn't go away, so just shoot me an email if you have something.
Okay, so we did get a question. Can you state how long this funding is available? So this is one-time money that we received from the governor as part of the rainy day funds to support the COVID relief. So we have this $5 million. Of the $5 million, we will probably issue about 45 awards. So we will issue these awards until the money runs out. I think it probably, at the rate we're going, and hopefully we will be able to deploy this money quickly, and probably within the next 3 to 6 months, I would think we would have the money, the money would be spent. So I would encourage you to apply early to get the funds. We also have a provision in this. If you receive an award, you have the option of coming back 6 months later to reapply for funding and get another tranche of funds, as long as there's money available. So again, it's another reason to kind of get in quickly and submit an application. So another question, does this hinder or interfere with another application for the Builder Fund? And the answer is no. You could apply for this program, and at the same time, you can apply for the Builder Fund or any of our other programs as well. We've been promoting this program to our portfolio companies in the Builder Fund and in our funding programs. So we would encourage them to apply, but you can apply to this and Builder Fund at the same time. So another question is, how much would the second tranche be if we came back? Again, it's another, provided there's funding available, you would be able to apply and get another $100,000. All of that is spelled out in the RFA that Sakari spoke about, which is also posted on our website. Let's see. So that's all the questions I have so far. Okay, any other questions? We can wrap up if there are no more questions. And we'll do that. And Tammy is thanking us for doing this today. Tammy is our Vice President for Marketing Communications, and she put this. She was the one. She and her staff were the ones that helped us put this together. So I want to kudos to her.
Yes, thanks, Tammy.
And we will, I think we're recording this session, so I think what we will do is, I'm not sure what Tammy's going to do with this recording, but we might be able to post this on our website or something and make it available to others. Maybe I'm getting my hand slapped, kicked under the table. I'm not sure if we can do that or not, but I'll talk to Tammy to see if we can get that done. But so she says, yes, we will be posting it on the Rubric webpage. So if you know of other folks who would qualify for this program, we would encourage you to spread the word. Again, I think it's important. We know there's a lot of companies out there that have been impacted in a negative way by COVID, and we're, as Sakari put so well, we're here to be helpful, and that's what this program's about. And this is what all of TEDCO is about. We're here to help entrepreneurs be more successful. So encourage you to take advantage of this program and take advantage of our other programs. And I want to thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a good day.